Everybody has a story to tell, whether they're just a creator or a student or a mom that just wants to connect with their family, friends.
What happens when creative tools get smarter and more accessible?
We see AI as a tool, and tools are tools. It's really about how you apply the tool to solve a problem or create an opportunity.
So where is this all going? What should we be learning now?
One skill that creatives must have is how they use AI. Really understanding how to use AI to accelerate the work that you're doing is important now and only going to be more and more important in the future. A range of creative projects, but it's also really about the humans, everything over Nora, but it's also about the people that we meet that are just able to do what they love.
Hi, Ashley. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I know we both flew in from different cities last night, but so happy to be here in the Adobe New York office with you. I've been reading a lot about your background and your time here at Adobe. And one thing that really stood out to me, which is really inspiring, is your career here at Adobe. I know you started as an intern and now you're SVP, you're general manager of the creative product group. Can you share a little bit more with me about your experience here at Adobe and what it is you do?
Absolutely. So first, it's so nice to be here with you, and thank you so much for taking the time. Yes, it's very unusual. I would say in general, right, these days, but certainly in technology, to have been with the company for as long as I have and kind of starting as an intern. And I've had so many different roles across the company, which is really a testament to Adobe as a place to have a great career, but also for me personally about how much our mission really resonates and kind of inspires me. But that's true for so many people that work at Adobe. And what we're all about is creativity for all and making the tools and applications that really anyone can use to express themselves. And everybody has a story to tell, whether they directly earn a living from being a creative professional, or they're just a creator or a student or a mom or, anyone that just wants to connect with their family, friends, whoever around content that really matters to them. So, and that really has kind of inspires so many of us at Adobe. And, obviously it's an incredible honor to currently run the creative product group, which makes a lot of these tools and applications for people to express themselves.
And I love that you mentioned that too, the different personas, if you will, or different people using it, because it is true. It's one of those things that I was so excited to sit down with you today for many reasons, but one being because your time here at Adobe, I'm sure you've seen so many evolutions with the tech and how it's impacted people's careers and frankly, their lives in turn, having that freedom to choose feel enabled to do what they want to do because of these tools, get more creative. And I'm really excited to dive into this conversation to not only look at things that Adobe has done in the past and enabled others, but then also to look ahead. Because I think for someone to be able to as accurate as we can get when looking ahead, you need to also have that knowledge and history of where we've came from. And you have that. So I think that's really, really exciting.
Yes. I remember when we used to put Photoshop in a box and, and you would go to a store and physically, buy Photoshop, and it was on a CD at first and then a DVD. And of course now Photoshop is everywhere. Photoshop is on your phone. Photoshop is in a browser. And then of course you can install Photoshop on your computer as well. So you can really use Photoshop anywhere.
And Photoshop on a phone, Photoshop mobile, that is something that Adobe announced pretty recently.
Yes, just, a few months ago.
What was the thought behind that for the timing? Why was now the right time?
Yeah. Photoshop is one of those products that just has such broad reach. People really want to express themselves with images. They want to composite and blend and kind of get exactly what's in their mind's eye onto a canvas, right? With both their photographs, but also images and kind of ingredients that they collect from a lot of different places. And Photoshop is actually, even 20 years ago, a lot of our Photoshop customers were not professionals. So it has always been true that Photoshop kind of resonates with so many different people and how they're trying to express their creativity. And we've always tried to make Photoshop more and more accessible. Again, that mission of creativity for all. And we've been looking at phones for a while. And what was important to us and like why now is what is going to be different and unique, and how do we bring both the power of Photoshop to the phone, but also with UI that actually makes it more accessible, like takes that next kind of step function change in the people who are able to create with Photoshop. So it's really a combination of how much the phones themselves have evolved and like the power and the capability and our ability to really bring the full power of Photoshop to the phone, but really us unlocking the user experience that we think is kind of the right user experience for Photoshop on the phone. And of course it's free.
Yes.
So, and that's a huge difference as well. And obviously means that literally anyone can just install Photoshop and use it.
So I'm really curious to get your take on what you have seen working in this space, these creator tools that have different AI features, but for me anyways, it seems like it's enabling people to do more, be more creative, but I'm curious to get your take on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we see AI as a tool, right? And tools are tools, right? Mm-hmm. It's really about how you apply the tool to solve a problem or create an opportunity versus the tool in and of itself. And so, for example, a lot of creatives, if you just look at a prompt interface, like you're literally just typing words and it produces an image or a video or whatever it might be, it's interesting and it can spark ideation, but that's where it doesn't resonate as much because it's like, but that's not what I wanted to create. Yes. That's not what was in my mind's eye. Yeah. And so it's really about how do you bring control around AI so that you get some of the power. Like AI is great at rapid ideation. Yes. Because ideation and kind of creative exploration has existed forever, right? Yeah. Creative people gather ideas, right, in so many different ways. And whether it's sketching or cutting out, ideas or taking, walking around and taking pictures and kind of bringing that all together and like developing storyboards and mood boards and all that has been around for forever. Yeah. But it can be a very time consuming process. And one of the things that we find is creatives are really busy. Yeah. People are producing more content than ever, particularly for all the different social channels and, web and all of the ways that you can reach people today. And so they actually don't have enough time to ideate. And so it's a great problem for AI to help solve, but it has to be controllable. And that's how we've really differed in our approach is, through Firefly and through bringing AI into our creative tools like Photoshop and Premiere and others. It's actually all about how do you enable the creative to drive the outcome of the model more and more. And we do this by, for example, bringing in source content. So if you have your own images, or your own videos, or your own content that you're basically using to guide the AI, yes. Or with the Firefly video model, which we just launched recently, being able to actually control the camera angle. And, all of these are ways, and this is really just the beginning. Things like structure reference, where you actually can just quickly draw a sketch of the rough structure that you want a scene to have, but then you enter a prompt for, the colors and to describe the actual scene. All of these are ways that Adobe is kind of uniquely thinking about how interfaces, how Firefly specifically enables creative to have a tool that they can control for ideation. And that then becomes really exciting to creatives, and they don't see it as a replacement for their creativity. they see it as this augmentation and acceleration of their creativity. And we're seeing huge response to Firefly Video Model, partially because you can take an image and make a video out of it. So even just simple things like people that have been posting images to social can now turn that content into something that's just like has a little bit more engagement to it. And it's still their content. It's still their idea, but it's just set to motion.
Exactly.
So that's been a really popular use case. And then, of course, like you just need these 5-second kind of clips. You know, I don't even know if I would call it B-roll, just like idea explorations of video content that has really resonated. And you mentioned commercially safe. It's been really important to us to, particularly with our role in the creative community, to say, hey, when we develop our AI models, we're only going to train those models on content that we have a direct license to. And there's obviously a lot of very strong belief in the creative community that going and scraping all the content from the internet to train models doesn't respect artists' rights. So for our models, we, absolutely respect artists' rights. The outcome of that is that it's commercially safe. Like businesses who don't want to worry about the copyright and the IP of the models that they're using and like put themselves at risk, they can have a lot of trust in, complete trust in the models that we have and the content that we generate because of the way that we train our content. We also work with partners. Like we are not in the business of telling people what they can and can't use. And so we have made announcements that will integrate non-Adobe models into our products because particularly for things like ideation, there's kind of a specific aesthetic to different models, like based on obviously how they're trained and how the models are developed. And that's really important for creatives and ideation.
It really is. Actually, if you had a guess in, say, 5 years from now, what is one creative skill that you think we all are going to be like, oh, I wish I would have started that today?
I mean, obviously creatives need to hone their craft in how they represent ideas and, their aesthetic and all of those things matter. Like we say, taste matters more than ever, right?
Yeah.
But one skill that creatives must have is how they use AI. And we're seeing and hearing this from creative directors and heads of product design teams that it's really starting to impact who they're hiring. So particularly if you want a career, right, as a creative professional, really understanding how to use AI to really accelerate the work that you're doing is important now and only going to be more and more important in the future.
Yes.
And the same is true, I would say, in almost any field. Like, for example, obviously at Adobe, we have a lot of engineering teams. And an incredibly high percentage of the engineers at Adobe are using AI to help them, to write code and test and all of those things. So, again, I don't think it's limited to creativity, but it's certainly true.
Yeah, 100%. It is one of those things where we spoke about it earlier too, that AI is a tool.
Yep.
So it's going back to whatever field you are in creative fields, engineering, any field at this point, really.
Yep.
Understanding how to use those tools or use tools that have AI integrated into it is going to set you apart.
Absolutely. And it would be, like how 30 years ago saying if you have creative aspirations, you should learn how to use a computer.
Exactly.
Right? Or you should learn how to use software. Technology has always evolved and technology has really always been a part of creativity for many, many, decades or even you could argue centuries. Like a printing press is technology. One thing that we often say is AI itself is not going to replace creative jobs, but creatives who understand AI will replace creatives who don't.
I couldn't agree more. And it's moving so quickly in an exciting way. I have to ask, I'm very curious because Adobe Creative Cloud Tools, to be specific, has helped powered everything from Oscar-winning films to TikToks with millions of views to maybe some of these tools have helped moms with their, PTA banners or different things like that. Like it varies so much. As someone who has seen so many different evolutions with Adobe, is there one or two projects that come to mind that you think, wow, we powered that? That's really cool.
Well, of course, the big Hollywood films are incredibly moments of great pride from Everything Everywhere All at Once that use multiple tools, and it's obviously not just Premiere, like Photoshop has won Academy Awards, right? And After Effects and Frame.io, which is an awesome product for collaboration that creatives use a range of creative projects. But it's also really about the humans, everything over Anora, but it's also about the people that we meet that are just able to do what they love.
Yeah.
And they might be a freelancer, right? But they wanted to be a graphic designer. And, I often meet people who might be just in a coffee shop or, at a trade show or wherever it might be. And their stories inspire us every day, where it's, that they're able to pursue their passion and do what they love, in part because of the tools that we create.
I love that. And I can completely attest to that as someone who started my creator journey on Premiere Pro. I was sharing with your team earlier that I had no video editing experience, and I met my best friend's brother at a public library, and he gave me a crash course on how to use it. This is going way back. And that was really the beginning of, what ended up being my career and getting to be so fulfilled because I had those tools to enable me to do things that wouldn't have been possible otherwise.
Yep, absolutely. And again, what our mission is to just make that accessible to more and more people. There's obviously Premiere Pro, which you're using. Mr. Beast is, a huge, huge user and basically has an entire production house at this point. It's also people that are really just getting started that edit their first video in Adobe Express.
Exactly. Or,
to your point earlier, are using Firefly to actually be confident enough to actually generate their first video clip. And it's really those moments of creativity and being like, I can do this. I can get the idea that's in my head out and explore it and refine it. All of that really, is really what we're about and what Creativity for All stands for us.
Well, Ashley, thank you so much for taking time to chat with me today. I'm leaving this conversation feeling very excited about not only where we are at today, but where we are headed. I know we spoke about some exciting announcements that Adobe recently made, but I'm sure there are tons more to come this year. So I'll stay tuned for that. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. So nice to talk to you.